Hello and welcome to the wonderful world of Innova, alive and composing with today's guest, Darryl Brenzel. Would you please state your name properly for the record, please?
My name is Darryl Brenzel.
And where does a lovely name like Brenzel come from, not to mention Darryl?
That's a German name.
What does it mean?
I don't know. Possibly draft dodger. My great-great-grandfather left Germany. He was, I believe, 14 or 15, right before whatever birthday might have caused him to be drafted into the Prussian army. So he bolted before that. Of course, he ended up fighting for the Union Army in the Civil War, so it didn't make a difference.
Well, I think we'll come back to the military connection in your genes in just a minute. But first of all, do you have a pet? Does it have a name, and why?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Do you have a household pet? Do you live a lifestyle that allows you to enjoy some
yeah,
fairy creature?
I've got a dog named Chloe. She's that way, laying on the deck in the sun.
Okay, is that related to your love of Ravel, Daphne, say Chloe, or another Chloe?
She came with the name Chloe. She was a rescue dog.
Okay, so you live according to random happenstance. And after a hard day arranging big band at the computer, how do you like to spoil yourself? What are your secret guilty pleasures?
Watching soccer, or football as the rest of the world calls it.
And are you an observer of this, or are you a current or former exponent of the art?
I played through high school, played what I say is the Stone Ages as far as U.S. soccer. That was in the 70s, but I enjoyed, and I played in an adult summer league for 1 year, but my playing days are behind. I'm mostly an observer.
And if you weren't making music as a career, what might you have ended up doing?
Oh, good question. Possibly I've ended up in math. It was a subject that I did fairly well in school. My dad was a math teacher, but I'm not sure. It sounds a whole lot more boring than music, so I don't know.
And what's the weirdest dream you've ever had? Do you have a recurring nightmare or something just bizarre that you've never figured out, or a one-off?
Oh, the weirdest dream I've ever had. Of course, I guess I've had that one where everybody has, where they're stuck somewhere with no clothes on. And no idea how they had that happen.
And was that something that might have been associated with the premiere of the Rite of Spring, or?
This is long before that, so.
Okay, and you've already had an illustrious career, and I imagine it involved a lot of travel. Tell us a little bit about what you've been doing all these years, and how you relate to the planet Earth. Do you feel that Maryland is your home, or that you'd really rather be somewhere else?
Well, I'll start with some of the career stuff. I had a 26-year career in the U.S. military, did a couple different things. I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years, played in their advanced program, had a little break in the service, spent a couple years at Berklee College of Music in Boston, studied with some fantastic people there. Came back in the service. In the last 20 years, I was with a band called the Jazz Ambassadors, which was an 18-piece big band, and we spent anywhere from 100 to 120 days out of every year on the road, performing public concerts, playing big band music, going all the way back to about the 20s to current stuff, as original stuff from the guys in the band. So that's where I got a lot of chance to develop my craft as a composer and arranger, writing for that band. I retired about 4 years ago. I stayed in the Maryland area, which is where I was stationed. I'm currently teaching at Towson University. This year I'll be teaching at Gettysburg College as well. That's just a one-year position, filling in for someone taking a leave of absence. I guess I feel pretty at home in Maryland, the D.C. area. It's I left at the age of 18 from my little town of Germantown, New York, up in the Hudson Valley. Have not been back there in quite a few years. I missed their big tricentennial celebration 2 years ago, but yeah, I feel pretty at home at Maryland. My wife is from Maryland, and her family's here, so it feels like a pretty natural place to be.
I don't know if civilians are aware or appreciate enough the connection between the service and the musicians who are often part of it. there have been some terrific composers and arrangers who came out of that tradition, and, from the 40s on, certainly, and probably more recently too. Do you see a special connection between people who choose to be musicians and serve that you don't see elsewhere?
Yeah, I guess there is kind of a fraternity. For instance, in the Washington, D.C. area, which is, I live fairly close to there, the services have what they call their premier bands. They have the bands that are really quite a step above what you might find at, say, Fort Hood in Texas or something like that. Although they are professional bands, the bands here are at another level. A lot of guys knew each other in college. There's a lot of North Texas people in some of the jazz bands, and the guys work together in various big bands, R&B bands, wedding band stuff over the weekend. And there's certainly kind of a fraternity amongst those players because they've paid a certain amount of dues musically, and they're also paying certain different type of dues with the military and the service that they're doing there. So yeah, it's kind of a unique fraternity.
Is there a kind of music that you may not find represented in the service? Like, is there much free improv, for instance, or I don't know what? Yeah,
it's difficult to kind of push those boundaries within the duty jobs. The groups are community relations tool and a ceremonial tool and various things like that. So as far as real cutting edge stuff, that's what the guys are trying to do on their own time.
Right. And looking back, what has been the most memorable or mind-blowing piece of art you ever witnessed? Was there one that you just saw or heard or read and it changed your life forever and you thought, that's what I want to do, or I'm going to think differently about creation from now on?
Well, it's really hard, I guess, to point to one, perhaps, but there's been a number. The first time I heard of Sonny Rollins, it was the live at the Village Vanguard stuff, and I was probably a sophomore in high school or something, and just hearing the power come out of his horn. And then when I heard Charlie Parker, I was like, I couldn't believe that it's even possible to play it like that. And a number of live experiences, and then hearing Thad Jones for the first time, hearing Maria Schneider's music, just how she really took some very different influences, kind of took what Gil Evans was doing and just took a little fork off that road. Some of the beauty that's in her music. The first time I heard her live, I believe she played that piece called Sky Blue. And, Steve Wilson playing soprano. I was just stunned, like silent after the piece and his performance. So there's been a number of times like that where I've just heard some things that have just moved me and thought, I had no idea, that the instrument or the composition or whatever could have such power.
And now you've taken up teaching. What's your advice to the young? What are the words of wisdom you like to share with them?
Well, hone your tools, get as many tools in that box as you can get, and then find ways to find your own voice using all those tools. Sometimes there's too much emphasis on one or the other. Get too technical and forget to be creative, and other times people get the cart in front of the horse a little bit and want to be a little bit too crazy without having mastered some of the things that they need to master first.
And we're going to get on to your incredible Innova release, the Rite of Spring here, which is, it's not 100% Stravinsky and it's not 100% Brenzel. It's somewhere in the middle there. First of all, is it typical of what you've done, or is it an exception in your catalog?
Well, I would say both. It's certainly an exception in that I've never taken an orchestral work or something of this sort to translate or adapt into the modern big band setting. But it is also typical in that I've taken other works, whether it's just standards, or I've done a lot of pop tunes from say the '60s and the '70s, Beatles, Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, Bob Marley, and taken them and done arrangements where I'm not trying to do just sort of cover version, but really to adapt them into a new piece, still recognizable as what it was, but something still very new and unique. So first time doing orchestral stuff, but not the first time using that type of approach.
It's kind of astonishing because this particular piece, or maybe classical music in general, is treated kind of reverently. People try and do exactly as the composer said, especially in the Rite of Spring, where there are so many specific markings. And you've gone and subverted the whole damn thing, although reverently. Is that something that you were aware of, or does that explain why so few people have tried to arrange, classical war horses?
I'm not sure. Certainly it's been done before. I mean, the most probably obvious example would be Duke Ellington doing the Nutcracker Suite. He had done some other things. Even a hit tune like Tommy Dorsey's Song of India. And I think that was done at a time when I think ASCAP was not allowing the bands to record any of their music, so they went to the public domain and started doing some classical stuff. But as I approached it, I certainly tried to make it still Stravinsky, recognizable as Stravinsky, and respect what he did, and then adapt it into a new setting. But probably there's people that are going to love it and people that will be, appalled.
Now, you have one advantage over Stravinsky because he didn't know that he was about to turn to jazz and ragtime and serialism and things later in life. Did any of that weigh in on your arrangement decisions? Did you collapse any of that, or did you just decide to do your own take on that one piece?
I'm not sure if I understand the question.
Well, I mean, none of what I hear in your recording sounds at all like Stravinsky's own jazz.
Okay.
Like Ragtime, or some of these other pieces where he was doing contemporary jazz of the 20s. And also, I don't hear pitch-picking serialism as he did in his later period. It's just between you, the big band, and the Rite of Spring, as far as I can tell. Yeah.
I mean, I'm a little bit familiar with some of those pieces, like you mentioned, and certainly those influences were very early jazz. So I felt like what I was doing needed to be, close to now. I mean, there are some of it reflects some maybe Ellingtonian, Mingus influences, but I still consider it to be very contemporary as opposed to 20s style jazz and other more modern things using electric guitar with distortion and that. So I was definitely not trying to recreate Stravinsky jazz. I was using Stravinsky to create modern jazz.
Was there also any thought in your mind about, as Stravinsky was writing it, he was subverting ballet. He was turning it upside down, and I've seen the original choreography, and it was pretty offensive when those trained ballerinas start digging their heels out of sync into the stage. You can see why there was a riot. Was there anything about your rhythmic style or anything about the energy that you thought, well, I can see people tapping their foot or throwing their bodies around, or we'll just make this a good time in a really cool bar?
I just try to, approach this as I would pretty much anything else. I realized it was, ballet. I wasn't thinking so much about dance as I wrote it. I was just thinking about how can I make this work, that's all.
Is there one track or movement that you'd like to single out as we kind of lead out here a little bit, or anything else you want to mention about this amazing project?
There's a lot of great stuff there because there was so much great source material, but I would say Spring Rounds is my personal favorite. I think it has, you might be able to say that it's beautiful. The Stravinsky version itself is beautiful in what we might say is the traditional sense of beauty. There was a beautiful flowing melody and line. I mean, toward the end it still gets very loud and bombastic, but there was just really room there for some beauty, some beautiful colors, nice mixes of woodwinds and mutes, and Andrew Layton just plays an absolutely gorgeous soprano saxophone solo on it. I think it's probably the piece on there that might most closely reflect the influences of Maria Schneider, but that's just my personal favorite piece.
Is there a future for this? Now it exists in recorded form, and I think it's been done once, right? Do you have any plans for spreading it around?
There's been a couple other performances of it. Last spring I directed the Naval Academy Jazz Ensemble in a performance, and then there's a big band in DC called the Bohemian Caverns Jazz Orchestra, which performs every Monday night at the Bohemian Caverns. They did it at the Intersections Festival in DC. Starting to get interest from a few people and from colleges and stuff purchasing it. I did get an email today from I believe Martin West, the music director and conductor for the San Francisco Ballet, and he likes it and is passing it on to their choreographer. They have plans to do Rite of Spring, and it's possible that they might be choreographing this to my score, so that would be very exciting.
Well, I'm sure that's just one of many accolades, and it's the 99th anniversary, which means it's in good time for the centennial coming up.
Correct.
So I congratulate you on this and all your other projects, and thanks for talking with us today.
Thank you very much.